Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Redtail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us. My name is Catherine Beltran, and I'm a Redtail trainer here, actually. We have another weekly webinar here focusing on our Redtail essentials of workflows. Now, if you joined us a couple months ago, we actually did a rather extremely deep dive version of workflows. I know we broke it down with the whiteboarding phase, how to build it, how to actually apply it, what about automations and all those things. So we did a more in-depth a couple months ago, but there are still some specifics that we aren't really able to cover during that series, as well as there's just some things that really just need to be reiterated because of how important they really are. So before I actually hop into some of those kind of tips and tricks as far as using workflows, I want to actually make sure that we all understand what a workflow is. I know we get that question all the time. Well, what exactly is a workflow? What is it? How do I use it? And a workflow is actually a process that we work through. So think about some situations that we might have on a daily basis. We might have client reviews that we have to actually schedule. As much as we'd love to just say, hey, it's as easy as creating a meeting and we're good to go, it's simply just not the case. There's always usually some prep that gets involved. There's all those follow-up activities, like including those notes, reaching back out, waiting for paperwork to be finished, things like that. So that itself is a process. We can even have processes when it comes to more of our internal things. I know usually this time of year we're onboarding some interns, and if that's something that you might be hitting home a little bit there, just know you can have a workflow as far as like that new employee process. What do we need to train them on? What paperwork do we need from them? What else do they need to be aware of? So it's just kind of making sure that every single time we run into a situation like that, we're prepared for it because we have a process that we can follow. So again, that's really what that workflow is that a process that we can work through. Now, workflow itself is also made up of several things. It's not just an easy, quick, hey, this is a workflow, here's all these things, I'm good to go. It has actual terminology that we use with it. There's actually 4 that I know I'm going to reference quite a few times, so I thought I'd give kind of like a definition beforehand. And the first is actually the definition of like what a step is. So that's the first thing that actually makes up a workflow. It's a step. And a step itself, I always like to just think of this as the placeholder or the title as to where we're at in that process. I'm in the prep phase. I'm in the actual meeting day itself. I'm in the follow-up. I'm in the waiting for client signatures phase. So it's just what those steps are. The tasks themselves are what you actually have to get done within that actual step. I have to prepare the paperwork. I need to confirm the meeting. I need to run several reports. So it's actually those things that you find yourself saying, I physically have to actually click some keys on my keyboard or go and pick up something from the printer. Those are those tasks. The third thing is the target date. What are we working towards? What are we working off of? In the instance of a client review, that itself is working towards the client review meeting itself. That is the target date. Me preparing for it is saying before it happens, I'm preparing for it, and following up with it, that's something after the meeting has occurred. And the last item that I know I'm going to mention is an outcome itself. So what an outcome is just saying, hey, when we were finished with that preparation phase, where do I go now? Where's the options that I can either A, skip over a step, just naturally go to step 2, or maybe I need to complete the workflow from right then and there. So those are those 4 things, and I know I'll go over them and it's always easier to see it, but I know for a fact I'll mention steps, tasks, targets, and outcomes. So I just wanted to give that review. Now, I think I've given you enough time to stare at our adorable little pup here, but let's actually hop into the CRM itself and kind of deep dive into workflow. So if not that, let's come on over. Perfect. So now we're actually looking at our training database here. Now, the very first thing I want to go over is just simply how to actually add a workflow. Now, I'm not going to go over how to create a template here because, again, we did just do that workflow series, but it's still a question I get all the time. I've built the workflows, but how do I use it? How do I actually put in that effort that I just did? So I'm actually going to go to a contact first because I'm going to come on over to Tim Taylor. And I'm actually just going to point out real quick that this is where I'm actually going to see if there's an active workflow attached to a contact, just immediately from the top of this page. So if I know for a fact Tim has to come in for a client review, I have a beautiful workflow template that I already have established. The first thing I'm going to want to do, come on up to this quick add to the top here, come on down to workflows, and I'm going to have my first pop up here. So again, I've already created this template. I'm going to come on over to workflow template and I'm going to find that client review workflow 2020. Now, if you kind of notice that really quick, and I'll just click on another one just so you can maybe capture that a little bit easier, there's some information that already pre-populates when I actually clicked on my template. That again is based upon how you've set that template up. However, you technically do not need to have a contact name, an owner, a category, or even a target date when it comes to a workflow. And I'll show you that from just creating without a template in a moment here. But I also wanted to reiterate, I can talk, reiterate that when we attach a workflow from a template itself, it's going to pre-fill with anything I've already set up. Now, coming on down here, again, this is a client review process. So I know for a fact my client review is going to base around the actual meeting itself. And if I find out, hey, he's actually coming in on the 1st, I'm going to pick that target date because, again, that meeting date is July 1st. Now, something pretty new here actually just popped in within the last few weeks here is this option of excluding weekends and federal holidays. So if you've worked with workflows in the past, or even if you're brand new and it's a kind of a worry that we're afraid tasks might fall on like a Saturday or Sunday, if you actually check this box off, it will ensure us that we don't have to worry about that task falling on those days that we're hopefully not working. So if we come on down now, I could just check that off. I have everything else I need. I'm going to go ahead and create my new workflow down here at the bottom. Now, when I click that create new workflow, it's immediately going to bring me to that workflow that is attached to good old Tim Taylor here. Now, as you can also see, I have my target date based around that July 1st that I had picked in here. And then also right here, there's that client review date items, that step 2, that has that review date itself as well. So what this is basically just saying is the way that I have set this up is that my prep, I want it to be due a couple days before. This is the meeting day itself, and this is after the meeting day. Obviously, I can't follow up until the review actually happens. So that's where that's just coming in with that after review process. Now, actually working through the workflow, I can actually just complete each task over here, just one-on-one here, anything that I have assigned to me. Or if I just had like a power moment and I just knocked everything out as far as this preparation goes, I can always complete this step right up here at the top. This is where it actually brings in that outcome. This is basically just one that we have set up with a template saying, hey, when I completed that prep, what happened? When I called and confirmed, did they cancel the meeting because they completely forgot that they're unavailable that day? Or did they go, you know what, just that date and time doesn't work, but the following Monday works perfectly? That's where we can always reschedule and re-prepare those. Now, I know sometimes we'll get the question of, well, why do we need to basically restart the step we're on? What this allows us is to give us this ability to add step notes saying, hey, the reason we're canceling is because of this. This is extremely helpful if you have any of those clients who are notorious for rescheduling on you. And then if they come back at you 7 months later going, hey, why did we never talk? You can go back and look at your step notes and go, well, these 7 attempts tell us that you were attacked by a bear, you had a flat tire, you had an emergency. So it gives you all of those reasons. So that way it's really kind of that CYA application in a workflow itself. And you also have the perfect world scenario. The meeting was confirmed. We're good to go. We can move forward. So if it's something like that, we don't necessarily have to add notes. You always can. You can always say, right on track, moving to the meeting. Even something as simple as that. And then I can complete that step and it's going to go ahead and open my step 2. Now, one thing again to reiterate is that you cannot have 2 steps open at the same time. You have to complete your first step or whatever step you're on before you can move on to the next step. So just always keep that in mind, is that if you can work on something simultaneously, I might recommend moving that task up within that same step so that way you can knock that out. I get that again all the time where it's like, well, this could happen. If it can, I would recommend just kind of putting that task again under that step. Now, something again that might happen is that you might have a contact who just needs a little bit more work. They just have a little bit more requirements that are necessary for just Tim Taylor. He's just a little bit extra for us. We can always add in new tasks on the workflow itself. So it's not going to impact my template. It's just going to actually update this one workflow for this individual contact. So again, if you have that client who's just needs a little bit more, a little bit more details, you can always add in new tasks. Similarly, you can always add in another step. So don't feel like I can't make any changes to a template once I've established it. You definitely can. It's entirely up to you, especially like I said, if you have those clients who just need a little bit extra work. So again, to attach the workflow, you'll just come on up to this quick add, come on down to workflows. And then in here, you can definitely just either complete the individual task, or again, if you completed all of those tasks in one sitting, complete on a whole step level. Now, this is one spot that you'll actually find these. There are several locations that you can actually find those tasks that are assigned to you. So again, this is one spot. You can also find any open tasks that you have on the today page. Now, if it has a due date of today, like this one down here for Thea Queen, there's a task due date here of today. So that's why it's popping up down here. Now, if you have anything that, it just wasn't a perfect scenario, it might be past due at this point in time, or it might be today and it might also be in the future, and I can kind of jump ahead. Always a great spot to check that out is going to be right on over here on the right hand side. So we have 16 active workflows. Of course, this is going to vary, this number, of course. But if I click on in here, this is where it's going to show me any of my tasks specifically that, again, might be past due, might have no due date, might be today, might be in the future. So this is always a good spot. And again, you can complete these individual tasks from here as well. So just another option. Another place that you can actually go, though, to find out what tasks you might have open is the calendar. Now, I will preface before we actually get this calendar to pop open that your preferences are required as far as setting up these particular tasks. So anything that's kind of in these teal colors, these are actually my workflow tasks. If this is something where I'm like, you know what, I normally want to see it, but I just have too much on my plate this week, and I just need to get a quick image of what I really have to get done, you can always hide the hide the workflow task just on a moment kind of action. But if it's something where you permanently want to see or permanently do not want to see, that's going to be under your preferences themselves. So just keep that in mind. I know some people absolutely love seeing the workflows task in here, and others, that's the worst thing on earth. But this is another option for you to find those tasks. Yet another place is actually over here where it says workflows on the left-hand side. So you can also find what workflows are currently open and actually jump into that workflow to see those specific tasks that you have. But this is actually a really perfect place to find out what are all the workflows I currently have open. So if you ever find yourself going, God, I feel like I have like 25 of them open and I'm not sure who they're for, come on over here to the workflows tab on the left, and it's going to show you anything that you have open and for who it's actually for. So this is a really, again, a great spot to get that overview for the whole database as far as what's open. Now, one thing that is pretty cool here, if you have to focus maybe by a specific owner, or you want to focus in by a specific current step due date, something like that, if you actually just click on the bolds up here, it'll actually resort. So I always like to click on my current step or my target date just to see if I'm actually falling behind like I am with these ones, or also to give me kind of a, ooh, I've got some things coming up here. Looks like it might be a busy week. So again, you just click on these bolds and it'll actually resort for you. Similarly, you can always view your complete as well. I know sometimes that is a big deal, as well as you can also filter it down. So if you're only worried about a specific team or specific user it's assigned to, you have that option from this filter as well. Now, what if we have a workflow that doesn't necessarily need to be created from a template? Maybe it's a typical Monday and you came in and it seems like the world is completely collapsing 5 minutes into starting the day. So I want to get a clear image of what I need to get finished, kind of like a checklist. Can you create that with a template? And the answer is yes. You can actually create a brand new workflow without a template. So if it was seriously something that's just, hey, Catherine's checklist to get her life together, something along those lines, I can actually just come on in here and name it something like I just did here. I can even put myself as the owner in here. I can pick if it has to deal with maybe my own customer service general policy, I can pick my category, or I can leave it blank and I could say, okay, you know what? I need to get all of this done by today. I can have that as that item. So I can have all of this just kind of set up, create it without a template. And what happens is that if I create this new workflow, it's going to just go ahead and create a shell of a document. So I can come on in here. You're going to see I'm going to get absolutely nothing. But similar to how we'd actually run through it like we did in the workflow series, I'm going to want to come in here, add those specific tasks. And again, I can create as many tasks as I need. Maybe it's, hey, call all those voicemails that I have left on here, reach out to those tickets, follow up with anyone I talked to this morning, anything like that. So I can create, as many tasks as I need just from this action icon over here to the left of the step name. And then I can also just come on down to the actual tasks, edit task, and actually say, hey, this is that call clients back. Something as simple as that. Again, I can assign it to me here, and I can literally just put update that task. So this is where I can literally come in here and start giving all of those juicy details. And I can also, again, just come on over here to the right, create new steps, because maybe I have multiple things I want to do. Maybe I want to have one for customer service. Maybe I have a project I need to knock out by this afternoon. This, again, is just kind of that one-off situation where my life is just a mess and I need to create some organization. This is a great option for you because, again, it's not going to be based off a template. But again, kind of just playing that little advocate here, what if you created a workflow and then about halfway through, because it happens, you realize that this is actually something that can apply to multiple contexts going forward. It's something that you really could use, and now that you've made it, you regret not making it as a template. The good news is that you can actually start off with no template, come back over here to workflows on the left, find the workflow in question, come on over to the action icon just to the left. You have the ability to save as a template from here. So that happens more often than we'd like to admit. We come in here going, nah, this only happens once a time. I'll never do this again. And then halfway through, we realize I'm going to end up doing this again. I could feel it. If that's the case, just know, again, you can save as a template after the fact, and you're not going to have to completely start over yet again. So just wanted to point that out there. So again, that's one way. Again, no template is also an option. You can create that no template from a new workflow when we're on the workflows tab, or similarly, when you quick add a workflow, either or will give you that option with no template. And as similarly as well, if it is going to be a workflow that you're just creating with no template, you still have that option to exclude a weekend. So if you know it's, again, something like a checklist for yourself that's for today, tomorrow, next Monday, next Tuesday, next Wednesday, if it's something like that, I would encourage checking that off so you don't have things just piling up over the weekend and becoming past due unintentionally for us there. So again, that's how we can do that. Now, if I come on back, I can actually come onto the bottom. We'll find that Tim Taylor one here. If, again, I needed to pop back in here to complete more tasks, I can, again, just come on over here and I can complete them on down from here. Now, if you're not sure if the template itself that you have has an outcome, or if you're running into a situation where this was the meeting day itself and Tim called the day of saying, hey, there's no way I'm going to make it, where we have a family emergency, I need to reschedule for 3 weeks from now. If that's the case and I don't have an outcome that normally allows me to re-prepare for it, I can actually create a new outcome that'll allow me to happen. So again, if that's not already an outcome that you have in your template, that is something that you can create kind of, again, on the spur of the moment. So if I came in here saying, hey, emergency, going back to step one, it'll then allow you to go, okay, well, which step do I need to go to? Again, you also can complete a workflow from any step. While it's not common for every single scenario, of course, you might have it though where it might be like a prospecting workflow and everything was going so great at the beginning. And then all of a sudden we ran into, kind of a wall and they said, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. If we're halfway through that workflow, I don't want to continue forward with it saying, oh yeah, life's great, everything's perfect. And then finally we get to step 7 and go, just kidding. They actually left us on step 2. Go ahead and create that outcome to complete from this step saying, hey, at this time, no longer pursuing. That is definitely a great option for you there. Now, something else that might occur when we already have a workflow attached to a client is we might have kind of steps and tasks that are not applicable to that contact, but we built the template to include those just in case. You can definitely always delete things if you don't need it. So like if I don't need this follow-up, now I definitely will say I do on this one, but if I don't, I could delete that step so I don't actually have to complete it. Again, don't intentionally create false data. If it doesn't or it doesn't work with that contact, you're perfectly fine either deleting those tasks, deleting those steps if they're not necessary for that contact. Again, I get it. Things aren't always exactly the same for each contact, and that's why we can still adapt it when it is a template itself. So that's another way. I'm going to go ahead and complete this step just as I'm working through it. And we'll say, yep, everything was perfect again. I'm living in a really good world with Tim. We go ahead and go to step 3. Now, one other thing I want to point out while we're looking at it here, it'll actually put the completed by date. So again, this comes back to if you have a task that is going to be, or a step that is going to be behind, that's okay. It'll still say when you actually completed it. Similarly, if you have, again, an all-star moment where you're like, yes, I got this done early, it'll go ahead and reflect that for you. Same with those step notes that we find. You can find them next to the actual step it was applying to, or you can find the step notes at the top here. So I can again look back and go, oh yay, good. I'm glad that this was something that I'm aware of. Again, probably more beneficial when it's one of those consistently rescheduling, consistently canceling type of scenario where you know what's happening. So that way you can, again, get all of those details instead of sitting here going, God, why has this been sitting on Tim Taylor for 7 months? You can always look at those notes and know why. Now, we've gone over how to actually apply the workflow, that new kind of experience with excluding the weekends. We've gone through completing things as far as the actual template. Now, one other thing that we always get is, well, what about some reporting options? Is there anything available there? And one thing that I always like to point out, I'm going to come back to workflows on the left, is actually this ability under the action icon, the same section we went to save as a template, there's actually a workflow checklist report. So I'm actually going to come back down to this one for Tim Taylor. I'm going to click on this workflow checklist report. I'm going to let it think for a moment here. But what this will do is it's going to actually give us this PDF printable version of saying, hey, here's what's happening. So if you ever find yourself going, you know what, I just need a quick one glance, I'm about to run out the door, I won't have my technology with me, this is always a good option for you. And again, this is actually going to be right over here under the action icon, just to the left of the actual workflow name. And that's where you're going to see that workflow checklist report. You also have 2 other workflow reports, and that's actually going to be in reports this time. So now we're setting you up for success here. Reports on the left, and then come on down all the way to the bottom here. You're going to see workflow reports. So again, you have 2 different versions. Workflow report is going to actually look very similar to what we see on the left. But if you ever need to filter it out by a specific workflow template, or you need a specific date range, or if it's for a specific person and you just don't want to go to that person, or again, maybe you just need whatever historical data that you can pull, this is a great report for you to do that. You can, again, set up these different filters so that way you get just what you're actually looking for. I had a client I was talking to the other day. He's like, hey, I use the same workflow for only this particular advisor. He's the only one that handles life insurance, but I don't actually know what he's been doing. And I'm like, that's perfectly fair. I understand life is complicated. So we went ahead, we pulled up this workflow report, we came on over to our filter options, and then we actually just found that specific workflow template So that way we can get just those specific, again, entries on that report. Now, the other option is actually the workflow task report. So I can actually come back over here to reports and then workflow, or I can come on over here and click more and then come on actually to the last option, workflow task report. This is actually probably one of my favorite spots to come to whenever I know for a fact that someone is going to be out of the office, whether that's for a vacation, whether that's for medical leave, or again, if we're living in a society where there's a lot of crazy things happening, there might be an emergency that just came up. This is a filter option that you can actually have. Hey, I want to know everything that Jack has open because I know for a fact he's going to be out of town for the next few weeks. This is going to go ahead and give me all of those tasks that he has open. So that way I'm not letting them fall through the cracks and going, gosh, this workflow just needs to be complete. Why is this holding up? And then I go and look and go, oh, right, Jack hasn't been here since May 24th. This has been open. That's 100% my bad. So this is, again, a great option as far as finding out those specific tasks that we have assigned. So that way, again, we're not letting them just stay open and failing on our end. It's letting us know, okay, we need to go ahead and reassign those out to those particular contexts. Which brings me to another topic when it comes to our actual workflows. So again, workflows on the left. I'm going to again come on down to our client review workflow. Now, let's say that this particular one, it's assigned to Tucker, which I'm actually logged into, but let's say this follow-up call actually needs to be someone else. Under the actual task, I have this reassign due. I can come on over and go, you know what? This is actually something that Jeremy is going to go ahead and handle, and I can update that task from there. So just again, coming back to that reiteration that you can start from a template, but you do not have to stick with that template should things need to change. This is just allowing us to go and say, hey, you know what, just for these few weeks, Jeremy is going to handle this particular task. Now, I will say though, if we know for a fact that person is permanently leaving, definitely update the template that you have. Don't leave it there and then change every single workflow going forward. Save yourself that headache, go to the template and update it if you really need to. Now, the very last thing that I want to actually do with this particular workflow is actually complete it out so that way you could see what happens. So again, I'm going to just say we finished everything. Jeremy, let me know to go ahead and complete it. I can complete this step. I can go ahead and say, yep, everything went perfect, follow-up complete, and complete my step from here. So what it will do, it'll go ahead and it'll close it out. I'll see 100% complete. But if I actually come to Tim's record now, I'll pull him back open here. Right over here in my latest notes, I'm going to actually see that workflow client review 2020 has been completed. So it'll say who had completed it at what date and time, and I'll have all of that in here. Now I can still click into the actual workflow. I can still see everything. So if I'm ever curious to go, you know what, that was completed early, interesting. Or, hey, I need to look at those step notes, see why this was completed late. I can still get that details. But again, if I just need that big picture to know, hey, it's been done, this is where I can come and see this. It saves as a note as well. So this is going to be my last point when it comes to our workflows here, is that if we are putting something that is consistently valuable as far as those reports that need to be pulled, utilize your categories to your best advantage here. So because this saves as a note, I can actually still have that category. It's the same category we use for activities and notes. I can come in here and go, you know what, this was supposed to be under my client review notes. I can update that note so that way it's again saved under the correct category and I don't have to go hunting for it later. So we've gone over how to add it. We've gone over how to work through it. We've gone over workflows on the very, very left. The one last spot you can see, because again, there's multiple ways to find workflow tasks. If anything is open, you will also see them right on down here. So this is kind of one of those hidden spots, because I know if you're not scrolling down to the bottom, you might miss it, but you will also see those open workflow tasks there. Again, just remember though, is that even if you start with a template, you are not stuck with that template. You always have the options to save as a template afterwards by starting with a brand new create no template. You can update new tasks. You can update new steps. You can add new outcomes if you need to. You always have that ability. Now, I know I didn't deep dive into how to actually build a workflow, because again, we did do that just a couple months ago, and I feel like in far greater depth. So if you missed that by any chance, we did record it, and I do want to point out where that's at. If you actually come on up to this question mark at the top here, and then come on over to the Redtail Help Desk icon. If you actually scroll to the bottom here, you should actually see Workflow Series right here. And it's going to go ahead and pull this open. So again, we broke it down to the whiteboarding, the conceptualizing, then the how to actually build it, and then actually applying it, which is a little bit over some things I went over today. And then again, wrapping it up with those enhancements and automations. At the bottom of this, you will also see some kind of companion, some helpful articles that I think will really help benefit as far as if you're starting out new or if you're getting stuck on a particular concept when it comes to workflows. These are really great articles as far as deep diving, as well as some samples. So again, if you've maybe built one or two and you're like, okay, I know we have other processes, but I can't remember for the life of me, come check out over here in some sample workflows. That will help give you some ideas on maybe some processes that you might use in your office. And again, you might find some other documents that'll be helpful for you here. So again, to get here, this is going to be from this question mark on over here, this help desk, and then scroll on the bottom here, you'll see Workflow Series.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.